In our concluding chapter 13, we situate the findings of our book within European integration theories and international relations theories. We evaluate the structural foreign policy versus relational foreign policy framework, which we used as a conceptual lens in the book, and we point to the issue of Eurocentrism in the analysis of EU foreign policy. In this video, we focus on only two topics: the relevance of European integration theories and the limitations of Eurocentric approaches.
Let us first look at some European integration theories. From an intergovernmentalist perspective, EU foreign policy is understood as being essentially driven by the member states, by their national interests, and by intergovernmental bargains. Agreements between member states have indeed been crucial in driving EU foreign policy forward. And reflecting the differences in power between member states, substantive breakthroughs on sensitive issues were only possible if a preliminary deal was reached among the most powerful member states. The repercussion of these intergovernmental dynamics is that developing a strong EU foreign policy with regard to crucial issues has often been impeded by the failure of intergovernmental bargaining to find a consensus among the member states.
However, the development of EU foreign policy in general, as well as the EU-specific policies towards other regions, countries and issues, go much further than a mere rational assessment of member states' national interest would suggest. Several dynamics ensure that even in an intergovernmentally organized CFSP and CSDP, the limitations of a consensus-oriented decision-making can be overcome. Decisions are indeed not simply based on the lowest common denominator. As new institutionalist approaches argue, the expanding institutional mechanism of EU foreign policy clearly matter, and they affect the content, scope and impact of its foreign policy. The gradual institutionalization of CFSP and CSDP, adding to the already strong institutional framework of the other facets of EU foreign policy, has indeed led to new mechanisms to define, defend and represent common EU interests, and to develop and implement common policies from this European perspective.
Relevant in that regard is the integration theory of neo-functionalism, which emphasizes that EU foreign policy has at least partially been driven by the internal dynamics of European integration. That dynamic is based on, first, the impulse provided by supranational actors such as the European Commission, which act as policy entrepreneurs or as engines of integration, and which push integration in foreign policy forward, or by non-state actors such as industrial groups. And secondly, the dynamic is also based on mechanisms of functional spillover, highlighting that dynamics of integration in one policy field lead to pressure for integration or cooperation in other policy fields, here foreign policy fields.
Let us conclude with a brief observation regarding the issue of Eurocentrism in the analysis of EU foreign policy. In most of the chapters of our book, we in general adopt a rather EU-centric approach, particularly the chapters on history, on actors and policymaking. But in the chapters on key issues, on the neighborhood and on the competing global and regional powers, we already pay much more attention to non-EU perspectives. And this clearly helps to explain the often rather limited effectiveness, relevance and external legitimacy of EU foreign policy. In the final section of our book, we therefore explain how we can try to overcome the limitations of Eurocentrism by decentring EU foreign policy analysis, which hopefully can further increase our understanding of the foreign policy of the European Union.